All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into the story of Figma, a company that spent 5 whole years building a free product until a giant like Microsoft literally begged them to start charging for it. We're going to unpack that wild journey and connect it all to founder Dylan Field's vision for what comes next, especially now that AI is changing everything about design. So let's kick things off with this quote from Dylan Field, because it just perfectly frames where we are right now. It really feels like we're at the very, very beginning of a massive shift. That simple chat box you're using today, yeah, in the future, it's probably going to look as ancient as a command line does to us now. This really sets the stage for a world where all the rules of creation are about to get a total rewrite.
Okay, but to really understand the future, we've got to go back, way back to the beginning. Before Figma was this huge thing, it was just an idea. And that idea was born from a really crucial choice that its founders had to make. So picture this. You've got Dylan Field and his co-founder Evan Wallace back at Brown University. And they're asking themselves this simple question: what's actually changing the world right now? Dylan was totally convinced it was drones. But Evan, who is his TA, he was all in on this thing called WebGL. Basically, a way to unlock a computer's graphics power right inside a web browser. Evan's conviction won out, and that single decision set the course for, well, everything that came after. And what this timeline really shows you is that Figma was definitely not some overnight success. It was a slow burn. From those first conversations in late 2011, it took them almost 2 full years of just exploring and tinkering before they even locked in on what the final product would be. It's just a powerful reminder that these huge, revolutionary ideas often start with years of patient searching. Yeah, so those early years, they were a total grind. They were just defined by this constant search full of pivots and dead ends, and, that big existential question that every startup faces. What are we actually building here? So what gets you through that kind of uncertainty? For Dylan, it was his absolute, total belief in his co-founder. He considered Evan a genius, seriously. So his worst-case scenario wasn't even failure. It was simply, hey, I get to spend a few years learning from one of the smartest people I know before maybe going back to school. That rock-solid belief in his partner, that was his ultimate safety net. And the path, it wasn't a straight line at all. At one point in 2012, Dylan gets this idea that memes are about to be huge. So they take a week off and build what he still calls a great fucking meme generator. And look, he was right about the trend, but after a week, they both kind of looked at each other and felt, you know what? This isn't why we dropped out of college. It was a funny little detour, but a really critical one for sharpening their focus on a much bigger mission. So how in the world did they get their first users when the product wasn't even finished? Well, they built what you could call a feedback engine. See, Dylan was a child actor, so he was kind of used to rejection, right? He actually went looking for it. He would cold email his design heroes and basically ask them, hey, please tell me where our product sucks. Then, and this is the key part, he'd follow up, show them he'd actually listened to their feedback, and slowly, he turned those critics into their first true believers. Okay, so after all that grinding, all the emails, all the iterating, when was the aha moment? When did they know for sure that Figma wasn't just some cool project, but was actually going to be a massive company?
Now, you'd probably think it was pretty early on, right? When those first users started trickling in, but nope. The answer is actually much, much later than you would ever expect. This was the moment. Years into the project, they get a call. It's Microsoft. And Microsoft basically says, hey, Figma is spreading like wildfire inside our company, but it's free, so we don't know if we should approve it or shut it down. I mean, a giant like Microsoft literally had to tell them, maybe you should charge for this. That was the ultimate signal.
And this whole experience is what Dylan calls product market pull. And it's different from just fit. It's way more intense. It's when your users are so obsessed, they're sending you like 12-page documents with feature requests. He says a lot of founders get this wrong. They see that and think, oh no, our product is broken. But the right mindset is, oh my God, they care enough to give us this feedback? This is huge. Just think about that for a second. 5 years. It took 5 years before they charged a single penny for the product. It's a path that's so long that Dylan himself now advises other founders, look, Don't do what I did. The lesson is pretty clear. Start charging sooner, because that's the ultimate test of whether your product is truly valuable. So Figma's rise is pretty incredible, right? But now let's pivot and look at Dylan's vision for the future. Because in this new world that's being totally remade by AI, he argues that the role of design isn't getting smaller, it's actually exploding in importance. This right here, this is the core idea for this new era. I mean, think about it. If AI makes the technical part of building software super easy for everyone, then what makes your product stand out? It's not just about the code anymore. The real differentiator becomes your design, your craft, and your unique point of view. What's really happening is that AI is just speeding up a trend that was already there. These lines between roles, they're just getting blurrier and blurrier. Product, design, development, research, they're not these separate little boxes anymore. AI is empowering the generalists, causing these functions to just converge into one fluid, creative process. So, with all this change swirling around, what's a core principle you can hang on to? Well, at Figma, it's this mantra. Keep the simple things simple, but make the complex things possible. A product has to be approachable enough for a newcomer to just jump in without sacrificing the power that your expert users absolutely need. It's a tough balance to strike, for sure, but it's an essential one. All right, let's bring it all home and talk about what this means for the actual identity of a designer. I mean, if AI empowers everyone to build and create, what does a designer even do in the future? And this brings us to a really interesting paradox about the future. On one hand, the professional designer is going to have more leverage and more expertise than ever before. But at the exact same time, pretty much everyone in a company will be contributing to the design process. So the designer's role, it shifts from being a solitary maker to being a leader and a curator. And that leaves us with one last big question to think about. If everyone can contribute to building things, maybe the most important design skill in the future isn't pushing pixels around a screen. Maybe it's about leading, editing, and synthesizing the best ideas. So is the designer's ultimate role to become the great curator?